Welcome. And today I wanted to focus on a few different things. Some casting versus carving, and some ancient weapons, and specifically something called a fascis, or fasces. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. It's a fairly new word to me. And all the wonderful comments that you have given me in furthering my research. I'm really excited to have discovered Flat Earth British by the suggestion again. And he's amazing. I mean, he's really answered the next questions that I've had. There was a mud flood, and okay, yes, yes, but now the who and the what and the why. I think naturally this is the direction we're moving in, and his discoveries with the fasces are really amazing, and I'll get to that very shortly here. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on I've always wanted to do a video on this, and there's so many parts of the world that I could pick, but I just had to pick a couple parts just to make this point, but any part of the world will show this. So it comes down to the whole carving versus casting question. And now I've always thought it was pretty ridiculous to imagine that people, sat here, especially this long ago, and just carved each individual little part, and squeezed in here, carved this area out, carved a statue inside of it. I've just always found it really unrealistic. And I think what we're really looking at here are cast pieces. And you'll see a lot of churches and cathedrals where you have these reoccurring pieces. I mean, they're not. You can actually see a separate piece right here. For example, this is a separate piece, and I think they were cast somewhere on a different premise and then put together. And that makes a lot more sense than, just imagining, somebody just carving away. And this one just really amazes me, this Duomo church in Italy. Really, really fascinating. They tell us that, basically, in short, it took 400 years to build, which I think is a really silly story, and you can look up the story on Wikipedia. But we're actually told that the church began construction in 1389 and was completed in 1805. I mean, really ridiculous. More like it was destroyed and it was rebuilt, and maybe destroyed again and then rebuilt. Or not even rebuilt, but renovated. Now, I do have older pictures that actually show this place in an earlier point in time. Let's see if this is it. Yeah, so here it is in an earlier point in time. It was just a really old black and white picture of, people kind of hanging out like they do in these old 1850s photos, no people around, and just a few, maybe men in suits, discussing how they're going to dupe the world. So, yeah, this is a really fascinating one. And the next place that I'm going to take you to is not far. It's in Spain, and this place is just amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. This is in Barcelona, Spain. And let's see if I can just get a little... Oh, this is a good one. This is really... It's better than I expected. It's very sharp. But yeah, look at this architecture. I mean, just insane. Absolutely insane. Like from another planet. I mean, who builds like this? Especially back when. Just amazing. And again, we're expected to believe that, you know, people hand carve this. No. And this was probably a kit that you could buy, you know, back when technologies were much greater. And I really liked Flat Earth British's idea and take on these windows and how they might, you know, all churches have these windows, how they might actually be more frequency generators, almost like a speaker, especially when in most churches you have the organ right on the other side of this, to where all those pipes and stacks and tubes would just be, you know, resonating off of this, and even the shapes, you know, I think that that has more to do with frequency than it actually does aesthetics, although it's beautiful too. Now, even here we can see palm trees. I mean, really, really interesting. So, even though they gave us great resolution here, I'm going to leave this picture only because I want to see something a little further out. And once again, the columns with these, you know, Martin really touched on these columns, and sometimes the columns run, you know, up and down, sometimes they swirl this way, and how this is actually symbolism for the wrapping of wire to produce, again, either frequency or electricity or something of that nature. So this is just really, really cool, and it's led me to think that this, and all cathedrals, you know, these probably the most beautiful buildings in the world are cathedrals. Really. I mean, they're, you know, in the center of towns, and they're absolutely amazing. And yet, you know, I'm beginning to question, is a cathedral even a cathedral? Did it even have anything to do with religion and spirituality? Or are we looking at, you know, some kind of weaponry or power plant or something of that nature? Now, you know, we see a very beautiful building and it's so unusual, but yet, you know, this could be the power plant of ancient times. And, you know, the ancient people, they obviously had a more beautiful architecture than we do. So why wouldn't they, you know, make reflect that even in a power plant? Yes, maybe it has artistic flares, and they didn't want an eyesore, but I really do believe that this has another purpose. And so now let me jump ahead to what that might be. And again, I have to thank Flat Earth British for his research, just absolutely amazing. I'd never heard about this next thing that I'm going to show you right here. Now this is called a fasces. I don't know how to say this, and it's amazing that I've never heard of this before, because they're everywhere. They are absolutely everywhere in our government and in symbolism and in statues, and it's just the kind of thing that we probably, you know, looked at and said, oh wow, this is, you know, an interesting, you know, little weapon of some sort. But what Martin goes into is that this could actually be more, I mean, it's not a practical weapon. It's very clumsy, yet yet it always exists. You know, even these carvings up here have one. There's ancient coins with them in here. They're always here, and yet could it have another purpose? And it really throws you off because it has this axe thing. You know, there's always this axe thing, and that kind of, you know, lends itself to seem like, you know, it's a weapon of some sort, and probably, you know, has been assumed as such without knowing what kind of technology this could be. But Martin goes on to explain that this could actually be a sound acoustic generating weapon. And now, always on the battlefield, you know, they'll carry these. You'll always see somebody carrying one. Here's somebody holding one right here. They call this one a Roman fasces. And, you know, what you see here, I mean, it almost looks like a bundle of reeds, or it could be pipes or tubes. And now these people are obviously not the real deal. So, you know, this is just going to be a little mock-up. You know, so this could be made out of anything cheesy, but it is representing something, a bunch of pipes, and then there is wrapping, again, like the wrapping of a wire or a Tesla coil or something. And then again, this axe really throws you off. And it threw me off until I thought about this. Now, if these were sound acoustic generating devices, and if even these churches could have been, you know, this could be a protection mechanism in the center of the town to ward off, you know, so you have your little portable one that you have on the battlefield, and then you have your, you know, absolutely, you know, you have your big guns at home. You know, these are what protect you. And now this looks more like some kind of weaponry, and all this pointiness, so much pointiness. I mean, must talk about the hardest way to build something. I mean, especially in 1389, you know, and even 1805 when they supposedly finished its construction. This is the hardest way to build something. I mean, so to me, this has a greater purpose. These have to be acoustic generating machines of some sort, and they probably had multiple purposes, but these are insane. And so, yeah, I mean, if you could destroy your enemy with sound, why wouldn't you? I mean, that's the way to go. And now we see these people carrying, you know, these around. And here is why I think that this is a sound generating weapon. And I'll show you right here. Now, here we go. Now, I used to live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we have lots of Hopi and Navajo Native Americans. And where I lived, I mean, people would sit on their porch and carve flutes. And I have seen, you know, hundreds of these. And what always caught my attention, you know, back when, was this little knobby deal. And I always wondered, what is this little knob? And I don't know if I asked somebody or eventually I just figured it out, but clearly this is to carry the acoustics. This clearly has to do with the sound, otherwise we're not going to put them on flutes. This is going to amplify the sound or direct it perhaps, and that is, I believe, what we are seeing on these. This is the same thing that we see on these Native American flutes. So now you have essentially a, you know, what we're seeing is a flute weapon. And again, this is your portable, mobile version. And today, most people probably think that the fasces is simply a weapon, like it's portrayed right here with this big handle. But if you see the older pictures and the carvings, there isn't a big convenient handle. No, and this axe is not typically on the end. It actually sits right on the edge. And so you can see variations of it. But this symbol, for example, is the more original version, of course, without the sword. So, yeah, I just really am grateful to have learned this new information, and wasn't gonna put out a video so soon, but I was inspired and thought I would share it immediately. Just real quick, I mean, amazing that this answers, it doesn't answer the who exactly, but this answers a how. You know, mud floods did not necessarily need to even be mud. Now that we're talking about frequency generation, similar to Tesla technology, now it doesn't have to be a bunch of water and mud moving in. Yes, it can be in some cases, but it doesn't have to be. Anyone who's experienced vibrations, whatever it is, a power tool, and you see things moving uphill, vibrations change everything. Frequency changes everything. And now you can simply move things around that normally wouldn't obey in those, in that way, you know, in our, you know, whatever, in our principles, regardless of science. I mean, in whatever is, things will behave differently with frequency. And so that's that could be very simply how these buildings could end up in, you know, 30 feet in some cases of mud. I mean, they could have been sank like quicksand. I mean, you simply shake the frequency and things begin to sink. And now people come along and wonder what happened, and it appears as if, you know, a big mud flood has come along. And again, I don't know. This is just hypothesis. But yeah, I definitely think something interesting has come about. So yes, I'll leave links below, and definitely check out Martin's work. Really, really interesting. And until then, many blessings, and I'll see you in the next video.